folks know to refresh their pages. And I think that we are off and running. Hey everybody, happy Wednesday. My name is Emily and I'm the community manager here at 2 Diabetes, working with Diabetes Hands Foundation. And today, in honor of Valentine's Day, which is this coming Sunday, just a few days away, for those of you who have not yet planned something for your loved one, you might get on that. Today we're talking with Daniele Hargenrader, also known as the Diabetes Dominator. And our topic for today is going to be diabetes in relationships. But first, let's meet Daniele and learn who she is and what she does. Daniele, camera is on you. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Fantastic.
Cool, I'm so excited to be here. So as you so kindly said, I am Daniele Hargenrader and also known as the Diabetes Dominator, thanks to my husband and my own creative brains many, many years ago. But I guess what I do is I help people with their health, to put it very simply. But in reality, what I do is I like to help people have a paradigm shift in the way they view living with a chronic disease and their health and their self-care, and kind of take it from what they may consider to be a burden to actually seeing it as something that they are lucky to have the opportunity to take care of, something that we have to do to something that we get to do. And that's in as few words as possible. That's what I do. I can't hear you.
Even that, sorry, I was having trouble unmuting myself. This is my first time doing this. So from something that we have to do to something that we get to do, that is a huge leap. And I would imagine for a lot of our guests watching right now, probably a lot of people are thinking, how on earth do you translate managing diabetes into something that you get to do? It almost makes it sound like a privilege. Can you talk about your approach to that?
Absolutely. So I'm a big fan and studier of human psychology. I'm what I like to call a lifelong learner. I'm a huge nerd. I love to learn. I love to read. And I've done lots of human psychology training, both going through it myself, personally transforming my own life, and also working with now probably hundreds of clients over the past 6 years, where we all as human beings have beliefs, and our beliefs come from wherever they come from, our childhood, our circumstances, our environment. And we also assign meanings and stories to everything that happens to us. Any event or circumstance that we experience, we assign a meaning to that. And it's up to us to assign that meaning. Of course, we can be shaped into what that meaning is for each of us, but we give that story. So I find that when we, as a community of people with diabetes or any other chronic disease that takes a lot of self-care and involvement, we tend to give that story a negative meaning. It's, I'm cursed with diabetes. This is something that I'm burdened with. And I know this personally because I went through many years of my life with an eating disorder and obese, and thinking that diabetes was a curse and that I was somehow a bad person, and that I, didn't deserve health or happiness, and that I wasn't going to be able to live a healthy, happy life. And through lots of examination of my belief systems about the stories and meanings that I had assigned to getting diagnosed with a chronic disease, I realized that it wasn't diabetes that was the problem. It was the meaning that I had given to why I had received or gotten diabetes. Not that we all really know why we get it, but since we don't know why we get it, that's even more reason why we make up all these fantastical stories about why we have it. And usually those are in a negative connotation. And since we made up those first beliefs, we have the exact same ability to make up new beliefs. And when we do that, that paradigm shift that I talk about actually happens in, I see it as it is kind of a blessing, because if this was 100 years ago, we'd be dead. And even I'm lucky to interview people like, Dr. Stephen Ponder, and people who've had diabetes for 50 years where they were injecting with glass syringes that they were boiling. Like, we have this amazing opportunity to use all this technology and have the ability to get to care for ourselves in a way that each year gets even more, I don't want to say the word easy because it's certainly not easy, but manageable. It makes it, and I look at it as an opportunity that I get to take advantage of versus a burden that I have to deal with. And just shifting that mindset, my life has gone from deep depression and an eating disorder to I'm happy all the time because I choose to be happy. It's a choice. And that's what it is, really.
Holy cow. That is such an empowered perspective on this experience. And I would love for you to share with our audience sort of your history with diabetes. You mentioned that you have had an eating disorder. You mentioned that you used to be overweight. If you can kind of walk us through what your journey has been so far and how you got to where you are right now. I think probably a lot of us have seen similar pieces in our own journeys, but not everyone has arrived where you are in this feeling of gratitude and empowerment around your diabetes. And so I'd love to hear how you got there.
Sure. So yeah, I was diagnosed when I was 9 years old. It was 1991. And I always say there was no internet, there was no Google. I didn't actually have a computer until I was like 16 or 17. And then it was dial-up. So that was like dial-up hell, which was horrible. But no, so it was 1991. I was diagnosed with diabetes, kind of your typical diagnosis. I was losing weight, drinking a lot of water, all of a sudden started wetting the bed at 9 years old, out of nowhere. So it was pretty evident that something was wrong. Went to the doctor, immediately got my blood sugar checked, went to the hospital, and I stayed there for 7 days. But the thing is about it in 1991, and I've actually talked to a lot of people who had great diagnosis stories, but I had one that I believe was not so great, meaning I was just given a lot of doom and gloom. It's like, oh, you have diabetes. Oh, here's this like pamphlet that shows like limbs being amputated and diabetic retinopathy and kidney failure, and so it was kind of like this swirl of negativity that was around it. And even though I had a great, my parents were a wonderful support system and we made it work, I just, in the immediacy of being diagnosed, that was kind of my mentality. That was the story that was given to me by doctors and things like that. And then we kind of made it work for a few years just by trial and error. And then about 3 years after I was diagnosed, it was the day after my 12th birthday, my father passed away extremely suddenly. It was within a week span of time. He was the co-owner of a plumbing company. He was doing his job 1 week and then had a massive heart attack. He went in for a quadruple bypass surgery, and the surgery happened, but he never recovered. He actually never woke up from the surgery, and like a week later was gone. So it was literally like as if, having a situation with diabetes wasn't enough. Here's like my mom who, was the bookkeeper for this. My mom and dad worked together every day, so they were very close. And then all of a sudden our whole lives were kind of turned upside down. So as like a 12-year-old prepubescent diabetic, all of this hormonal horror swirling, that became the catalyst. I don't know that the diabetes was the catalyst, but it was probably my dad's passing that was the catalyst for the binge eating addiction. So I found my comfort in food. It was always there for me. And I was also very private about it. I would hide food in my room. I'd hide it under my bed. I'd eat it when my mom was still at work, in between the time that I got home from school and she was still at work, or after she went to bed, I'd eat. And so even when I was around people, I didn't eat a lot of food, abnormally, but I would eat in private, and I'd do it every single day. So that took me from an average sized child to 200 plus pounds by the time I was 13, 14 years old. And then I spent my teenage life all the way until I didn't really start shedding weight slowly until I was about 19. So my whole teenage life, all through, high school and all that, was just, I was very introverted. I was miserable. I didn't want to, I never wanted to go to diabetes camp, even though my mom tried to encourage me to, go out, but I didn't want to leave the house. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was very unhappy. But what happened was, I'm thankful. Like I always say, I love my brain because I love to learn, and I'm open to change. I am a strong person, and I know that. I'm strong-willed. I'm stubborn. If I want to do something, I decide that I'm going to do it, and I do it. And I decided that, I wanted to learn more. So I started learning more about nutrition. Nutrition was really my base because my mom was always a great chef. She brought me into the kitchen with her, and she, she's Italian. So she let me know that food was something that I could handle. But I used to just make terrible food for myself. And then I decided, okay, well, if I can make really unhealthy food, I can also make healthy food probably taste really good. And I did. So I started studying nutrition, cooking better for myself, went to school for nutrition. That's really my nutrition is my bachelor's degree is in nutrition science. And I'm very passionate about that. So once I started seeing differences in my blood sugars and my patterns, and realizing that I finally figured out that it wasn't diabetes or the death of my father that was the reason why I was overweight and miserable and binge eating. It was the meaning that I had. I said, well, because my father died at 55. So I thought, well, if they're telling me all this negative stuff about diabetes and I'm going to get all these complications, then it's not really going to matter. But then I saw my blood sugars getting better and things getting better when I changed my choices. I'm like, well, if I change more choices, let's see what else happens. Because it's kind of like, instead of being on a downward spiral, I started being on a very slow upward spiral. So it's like, well, what if I do this? And what if I do this? And I just became, like you said, empowered, because I'm like, well, no, the choice is in my hands. This is my decision. I'm not going to have, retinopathy. I'm not, and maybe I will. I'm not unrealistic about it. I don't know if I'm going to have complications, not good. I'm not like a crazy person that says I'm immune to complications. But the reality is, I do feel confident that the better care that I give to myself, and the choices that I make that keep my blood sugars in a normal range, as however you want to, I hate medical terminology, in a range where you feel happy and comfortable, the less likely I'll be to have complications and live a full, happy life. And then I'm leaving out a lot here, but then I decided to get into physical fitness later after that, in my mid-20s, thanks to my husband, who's ex-military, and kind of introduced me to lifting weights in a way that I was open to learning. And then I went to personal training school, which was a 500-hour program. It was halfway in a class and half in a gym. So we'd go in the class and learn all the anatomy and physiology, and then we'd go right out to the gym and put it into action. So I changed my life there in 6 months by proving to myself, okay, well, I got this nutrition thing. Let's see about this fitness thing. And really, it was all kind of selfish. But then when I saw the changes that I could make for myself, and I realized I could help other people do the same thing, it was just, that was it. And I haven't looked back since then. And that's kind of where I am now.
That is an incredible progression.
Yeah, and it wasn't.
While I'm talking. I got an echo all of a sudden.
I don't hear it.
Oh, okay. That is a really incredible progression. I personally can really relate to a lot of what you said. I also had a binge eating problem through high school and college, and also was very private about it, and would eat late at night after everyone else had gone to bed, and suffered the incredible sort of debilitating depression that can come with that, and feeling like, look what I'm doing to myself, but I can't seem to stop. And for you to have turned that around into, I get to make all of my choices consciously, rather than being ruled by my emotions or compulsions, all of those things, it's just incredible progress that I think so many people struggle to make. So now you coach people in doing exactly that. What's your approach to that, and what are the things that you find most challenging in helping people make that a change from potentially feeling like they're not completely in control of their decisions and choices, to recognizing that they really are, and being able to make good choices?
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't know that I've met anyone who lives with diabetes who doesn't have some level of, and I hate the word dysfunction, but some level of unhealthy relationship with food. Because anytime that you have to obsess over something, and we really do, for lack of a better term, have to obsess about food, because that's the determining factor of whether or not our blood sugars are where we want them to be. So when you become so laser focused on something, so it becomes, it's try to put it in a lack of better terms, but it becomes like a decision on, do I want to decide that food is going to rule me, or do I want to decide that I want to rule my relationship with food? And so it really begins, my coaching, what I do is I teach what I call the 6 pillars of total health. And it's like a 6-week progression. I have an online course, but usually I work with people from 8 to 12 weeks, because that's just the minimum amount of time that it takes to really start affecting real sustainable change, because I'm very much all about sustainability. I don't want somebody to lose 5 pounds. I don't even care about losing weight, really. It's about changing your mind. That's what I'm here to help people do. So week one, the first pillar is mindset. We talk all about, I mean, we delve very deeply into beliefs, and really it becomes, even though I'm not a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist, it becomes a behavior. I really am here to affect behavioral change. And by doing that, you know, you have to be willing to do some work, and it's work that's inner work. It's work that we have to go back to your childhood, to your diagnosis, to when all of these stories and meanings began to develop, and really look at what were the catalysts for these stories, because everybody has these meanings that they give to. So what was it? And we really, I mean, it's a very in-depth personal process. So each client that I work with has, but I mean, for the patterns that I've seen, like I said, we all have some sort of dysfunction with food. So the mindset, once we have little bits of mindset shift, I really do find that the rest of, and I don't want to say falls into place, but it spills over into all the other categories, because we'll talk about nutrition and fitness and systems of our body and support, which is you know, I'm a big proponent of the diabetes online community and just having people to talk to, because there's just not, I don't think you can have sustainable health without a support system. And I think for me, the diabetes online community has been, I mean, there's not enough things that I can say about how many times I've just wanted to say something, and you can log on anytime to diabetes and say anything to anyone, and you're going to get a valid, you know, somebody who gets it kind of a response. And also then we end up with mindfulness, because I think mindfulness, which is a term that I think people don't really grasp. For me, it just means being present. Mindfulness means you're here right now. And when it comes to emotional eating, usually we get out of here. We let here go there and there and there. So like, even for me now, I have to be mindful when I go past the bakery department at the supermarket, because guess what? I smell the donuts and I see the donuts, but the mindful present part of me says, is that something you really want? Now, I'm not saying I never eat a donut. There's certainly times where I will allow myself to eat whatever I want. But I have that in a system now where I plan it out. It's not, so it's instead of me saying, oh, I'm just going to leave my house now and go get 6 donuts and eat them all. It's, you know, okay, it's Sunday and I had a great week and I paid attention. It's mindful. It's being present in the moment, instead of letting your emotions kind of just take control of you. Because I always say to people, it's like, nobody's forcing us to eat anything. Nobody's holding a gun. I mean, I hope that nobody's holding a gun to your head and saying, you have to eat all of this. And you kind of have to put it in those extreme terms to say, look, whether or not you know that your choices are yours, they are. There's no, and a lot of times we have this terrible ability to lie to ourselves. And I can't tell you how many years I lied to myself about, oh, well, I have diabetes and oh, I'm going to probably get all these complications. So whatever, it's not a big deal. I'll just do this. I'll just do this. But the reality is just doing it here and just doing it there adds up to every day. And then every day adds up to, you wake up in the morning and you are always wondering what else is there in life. And for me, like, I know this is not to get too philosophical, but it's, to me, it's the whole outcome of all of this is to wake up in the morning and feel happy. I mean, happiness is the end goal here. You're happy when you're feeling good about your nutrition choices. You're happy when you're feeling good and you're exercising regularly. You're happy when you feel like you have control over your choices. And I really think happiness is the end result, that because we all want to, you know, lose weight or get into an exercise routine. But I always say to people, why do you want to do that? It's a feeling that you're after. You're not necessarily after losing 10 pounds. You're not necessarily after lifting 100 pounds. You're after the feeling that doing those things is going to produce. And I'm all about recognizing what feelings you're after and why, and then figuring out the best way to get there, because really it's happiness. That's what we all want. But we're not, maybe I wasn't able to figure that out for myself. So I know that a lot of other people need help figuring that out, because it's a very difficult process to get through.
You know, you have a bunch of fans in our chat room right now on Tuesday who are listening along, and they would like to hear about the interviews that you were doing. You mentioned that you really value the diabetes online community, and you have become quite a force in the diabetes online community. And one of the things that you are doing there is a variety of interviews, of video interviews, kind of like this one, with different people in the DOC. Can you talk about those interviews and who you've been talking with, what the goals are around those interviews, and then where people can find them?
Absolutely. So I actually started the interview series, I believe it was the early part of last year, 2015. It feels like it's been for a lot longer, but I started then. I'm actually coming up soon, will be my 50th interview, which I'm very excited about. It flew by very quickly, but no, I really started in order to highlight and showcase as many people in the diabetes community as I possibly could that were happy, thriving, doing what they wanted to do with their lives. I wouldn't say despite diabetes, but also because of diabetes, because maybe diabetes led them to become stronger or feel more empowered or to reach out to help other people with diabetes or whatever it was. But diabetes was not the reason that they didn't chase their dreams, that they didn't follow their passions, and that they didn't decide not to live an epic life. Because I don't think diabetes should ever be the reason why we don't do that. And so I wanted to highlight people. So it's like, great, if you like me, great, but guess what? I'm going to give you a million other people to vibe with too. And like, if we can all do it, it's not just me out here that's doing well. It's tons and tons of other people, but I want to make sure that I can highlight as many of them as possible and kind of give it out there on the internet so people can see it on YouTube for free anytime. And just go there and watch them. My YouTube channel, I believe my YouTube is 824 Danielle, which I should probably take care of that. But if you Googled Diabetes Dominator YouTube or Danielle Hargenrader YouTube, I believe you'd find my channel. And they're there. They're Unleash Your Inner Diabetes Dominator interview series. And I'm always looking for people. I mean, even if there's people out there, you feel like you have a success story with diabetes and you feel happy. I'm not, I'm always looking for people to interview because believe it or not, I find a lot of great people, but a lot of people come and contact me, which I think is great. Oh, I'd love to be on your, great. If you have a great story and you feel like you're really happy and you can set a positive example and show people why diabetes is, not anything that holds you back, reach out. I'd love to hear from you because your success stories are what keep me on my toes. Like that's what makes me happy is hearing about other people thriving because that's just what it's all about. So I see you eating your jam over there. Are you blood sugar low?
Yeah, it's time for my tradition of having low blood sugar during the live interview.
Awesome.
We always like to keep it real here on Two Diabetes. And it's really uncanny how often my blood sugar drops during a live interview. You'd think if anything, it would go up if I were nervous. But I'm not afraid of you, Danielle, and I'm not afraid of our wonderful audience.
Good.
Blood sugar didn't go up. Anyway, so I'm going to keep eating my jam. But in the meantime, let's talk about diabetes in relationships.
Okay.
And I want to approach it really broadly, even though this topic is in honor of Valentine's Day that's coming up. I want to talk about relationships in general, not just our romantic relationships, because of course there are a lot of folks who, for whom the issue of diabetes, even within their family relationships and work relationships and friendships, can be really challenging. There are folks who were raised with parents who were not supportive of their diabetes management, and folks who work in places where they are told to test their blood sugar in the bathroom, and things like that. And so it's really, as everyone watching knows, it's something that really affects all of our relationships in one way or another. So I want to talk about it in that respect, in addition to our romantic relationships. First off, do you ever, is diabetes in relationships something that you encounter and coach people on in your current practice?
Yes, actually, it's interesting because I get the opportunity, which is awesome, to work with a lot of teenage girls. So that wasn't necessarily, I don't discriminate. I have had clients from anywhere from 12 to 76, but I find that a lot of mothers of teenage daughters contact me, and I find that there is a lot of, and I think that it carries over, and I find that women particularly, men I find have less of an issue with it, but wearing your pump or wearing your Dexcom becomes this thing where they don't want to look unsexy, which is weird to say to talk about with a teenager, but kids are worried about this. They will confide this in me. I don't want to, have to explain this to a boy or have to explain this. And it becomes this whole thing. And I think that for me, unfortunately, I didn't have to go through that because there was no CGM back then and I didn't pump. until I was married. So that wasn't an issue. But yeah, certainly I find that people have these issues. And I think, again, it kind of swings back to that kind of belief system. It's like, if you believe diabetes makes you unattractive or makes you unappealing or makes you weird or whatever word that you decide, then that feeling that you have about living with diabetes is going to come out, whether you say it outright or not. People are going to pick up your vibe. So I think that once you become comfortable and own your D, you like, this is my diabetes, this is who I am, the right people will become attracted into your life that aren't going to take issue with that. And I also personally think that if somebody has an issue with your diabetes or you checking your blood sugar or you pumping, then that person is not the person that should be in your life. Exactly. I find that diabetes can be a really good screening process for the dating process. Because if somebody, I've told this story before, but one time before I met my husband, I had gone out with this guy, and it was only one time, and we were at a restaurant and I was getting ready to inject, and he says to me, he says, "Can you do that in the bathroom?" And I said, "No, but you can feel free to go to the bathroom if you want. Like, it's over there." Like, no, like, and I think that that's all about like feeling empowered. Like, no, my pancreas is not producing insulin. So if you have a problem with that, move along. Like, it doesn't, you don't have to be mean about it, but you do kind of have to be like, think about and say, hey, do I really want to have to explain myself in a way that makes me feel like less than to anyone? The answer is no, because you're not. I don't care who's watching you. Everybody is not less than. Everybody's enough. Everybody's perfect the way they are. I truly believe that. You have everything within you that you need to do everything that you need to do. And guess what? If diabetes is part of that, that's part of who you are. And, it's not something that you should have to feel bad about. And if somebody is making you feel bad about diabetes, or you feel like they're being a negative influence in your life about diabetes, if it's somebody that you can move away from, then I would say to slowly begin to, not just say, hey, get out of my face, or maybe that is your approach, I don't know. But, slowly begin to remove yourself from your interactions with that person. Or if it's somebody that's very close to you, like a parent or a sibling or someone you're in a relationship with, then that's where it comes time to actually sit down and say, hey, I would like to have an open dialogue with you. And I find that people have a lot of issues with this because there's a lot of anger involved. So I think the number one piece of advice I can give is to know your outcome. What outcome are you after to have this conversation before you go into it? Because we can get very emotional about our diabetes, which is completely understandable and realistic. But other people just don't understand. And we can't expect people that don't have diabetes to just get the reality of the 24/7, 365 job that diabetes is. So we have to say, what's my outcome? My outcome may be that I'd really like to have this person know that when they say X, Y, and Z, whatever it may be about my diabetes, that it really makes me feel horrible. And that but then come in with a suggestion, and again, the key here is that this whole conversation can't be had in a state of rage and anger, because that's never going to bring out the end result that you're after. So you have to say, hey, mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, or maybe it's even your boss or somebody, because reality, there are laws that you can't discriminate against people that have diabetes. And, if you need to bring, the American Diabetes Association has a really great comprehensive list of, workplace laws and things like that. You can look that up. But you say, hey, I do have this disease. It does require extra time in my life. I do have to put forth a lot of extra decisions and a lot of extra thought processes and thought cycles to get where I need to be. So when you say this, it makes me feel like this. And maybe if you said this instead, it would really improve our, back and forth in our relationship. I think that we would have a lot more, I guess the right word would be have more progress in our relationship instead of constantly butting heads, and maybe even say, I'm coming from a place of love. I'd really like for us to have a relationship that's more functional. And this is how I think maybe we could do that. What do you think? And don't cut them off and then let them talk. Because in reality, I think that miscommunication and just actually lack of communication in general between not just relationships with your significant other, but with everybody, is that we don't listen enough. Every one of us. We want to say what we want to say, and then we want to cut it off. but we can't have a back and forth conversation without truly listening to what the other person has to say, because they might say something that you had no idea that they were even thinking, and then it gives you another insight and you're like, oh my God, I didn't realize that they were feeling that way. And then once you actually open up that dialogue from a place of love versus anger and rage and spite and all this other stuff, when you come from that place, it's very difficult to make progress or headway. So I think that's all relationships in general, whether it's home, school, work, parents, family, if that makes sense. Yeah.
We got an interesting comment in the chat room from Angela right now, who says that she's in school and she had a classmate who was a friend who for some period of time was constantly asking her to share her glucose tablets. And she would see Angela having glucose tabs, which I guess to this person looked like delicious candy, in class, and she was jealous that this friend got to eat in class and she wasn't allowed to eat in class. So she kept asking for her to share her candy. And I think it's needless to say that Angela didn't love this and didn't want to share her candy. But this is one of those examples of something that it's not even somebody saying like, don't do needles in front of me, or I don't want to see this creepy stuff that you have to do. It's somebody who's a friend who's not saying anything insulting, but they're not getting it. They're just clearly not getting the situation. How would you navigate a communication like that?
Well, probably the first thing, and I don't know how old, I guess it would depend on how old this person was, because if this was like a fourth grader, you know, I don't, because in class, I don't know, is it in class like in college class or in class like we're in
high school or college?
Okay, well, at that age, if somebody is having, you know, they have the ability to hopefully reason, and I think to maybe put it into terms of, hey, I know this might look like candy, but the thing is that this is medicine. This is a medical treatment for a very serious medical problem that I'm having right now. And then without having this medical treatment, this medicine, I could pass out. I could end up in the hospital. And I understand. And then, I mean, and again, I need a little more context, because if this person was really a friend of mine, I would just buy them their own glucose tablets. I would go to CVS, get them a pack of glucose tablets and say, hey, here's your glucose tablets. I have my glucose tablets. Have a way at it, because they're nasty. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, I try to put it into medical terms and say, I'm not eating these for joy. I'm not eating these because I'm feeling snacky. I'm having these because my blood sugar is low. And if I don't, there's a very good chance that I'm going to end up on the floor very soon. And I try to put it into a reasonable terms like that. And then again, depending on the age, I might just, you know, spend a couple bucks and buy them some glucose tabs and say, here's your glucose tabs and enjoy. I can't imagine wanting them, but hey, if you do, have them. I don't know. I guess that might be how I would go about it.
I love that suggestion to buy them some glucose tablets. Also, because presumably then they'll realize that it's not the most delicious snack that you could possibly hope for. So how about, here's one that I actually encounter rather a lot, is friends who really want to be helpful. I am blessed with very loving, helpful, wonderful friends, as I hope we all are. And so who ask me with some frequency whether they can get me anything. Do you need anything? I'll run to the store. I'll get you a banana. Are you hungry? Are you low? What can I do? And I appreciate it for sure, and I also don't need it because I take care of myself. But in terms of communicating, I thank you, but I don't need that. Sometimes that's kind of hard, because when we recognize that somebody is trying to be helpful, it can be hard to say, I don't actually want that help from you. Do you have suggestions on verbiage to be able to comfortably navigate that kind of communication with someone who really truly means well, but we want them to stop doing what they're doing?
I mean, really, I always try to say this. I guess I don't have a lot of confrontation in my life because I try specifically not to. But if it was going to come to that, and I am lucky to have a handful of very close friends that know very well that I'm self-sufficient, and that if I needed something, I would be the first person that I would ask for it. But I would probably say, again, I would approach it with the opener of, I love you. You are awesome. And I love hanging out with you, and you're the best friend ever. And just really flatter them and just say, but, living with the disease is sometimes really tough. And I appreciate very much that you want to help me, but I don't necessarily need the help that you're offering. But I just want you to know that sometimes when you offer it, it makes me feel a little uncomfortable, or maybe uncomfortable is not the word. However, it is making you feel, because it makes you feel like annoyed, be like, I don't, if just say, and the thing is, if I need something from you, you have my solemn word that I will be right on that, and I will ask you immediately. You have my word. Like, so if I need a banana, I need you to swing by 7-Eleven and grab me some sweet tarts or whatever it is, I will hit you up and you will know right away. And I promise you, and say, just really be loving and appreciate. And not to be like a broken record, but the more you come from a place of love and appreciation, the more receptive people are going to be to whatever it is you have to say. Like, it doesn't matter if you're saying good news or bad news. If you come from a place of love, people are going to want to listen to you. But if you come from like, why are you saying this to me? I don't need this. It's just going to snowball into something bad. So it has a lot to do with our own internal attitudes about things before we approach conversations. And I think that, whether it's diabetes related or not, it's human related. We are just so quick to dismiss other people's ideas and feelings and things like that. And even if we don't agree with them, I think that we need to be tolerant of everybody's views so that we can come together and communicate as a human race, versus saying, no this and no that, this, I'm right and you're wrong. And even if you truly believe with all of your heart that the other person is wrong, you don't need to scream that at them. Because for the simple fact that nothing is going to come of it that's going to help you or them. And I'm just all about what's going to be the best course of action that each party or all parties involved are going to feel catered to in some way, or feel like they're recognized, or feel like they're being acknowledged. So yeah, probably just coming from a place of love. Appreciate what you're doing. If I need anything, I promise you, I will text you.
Yeah, I love that added piece of promising this person who cares about you that if you need their help, you will let them know. So they don't need to keep checking in, and they don't need to feel like, oh, I'm still here for you. I'm still here for you. Don't forget, because you have stepped up to that side of the relationship, that if I need you here for me, I will communicate that to you, and you can count on that I'm not going to fall apart right in front of you because I didn't want to ask for your help. I feel like that brings out the piece in a relationship where the person with diabetes has the responsibility for communicating about what we need and what kinds of support work for us and don't work for us. There's the whole concept of the diabetes police or the food police, where we have, people who love us, frequently family members, who are asking, should you eat that? Can you eat that? I don't think you should eat that. I'm here to help you not eat that. And it for a lot of us, it sort of catches our hair on fire to be asked that or told that. So again, it's a situation in which we have a lot of responsibility to communicate well with that person. What would you say about the food police? What are your thoughts on that?
So I totally agree with what you say. And in general, and the reality of it is, having diabetes is more responsibility for us, whether it's on the medical side, whether it's on the communication side. And again, that's whether we decide to see that as a blessing or a curse, that's up to us, because guess what? We get to become better communicators. That becoming a better communicator improves everything. If you're a good communicator and you can really reach people and have a conversation with them that's going to get somewhere, you're far ahead of the game, because we're in a time right now where people are like, oh, I'm busy. I'm listening to you. And people are so used to being ignored and not heard that when somebody actually comes at them with an open communication, they're kind of floored and taken aback, and you've got their attention. So if you've got someone like that in your life, yes, we have to say we have to be the catalyst. We have to be the one that does the work. But doing the work, doing extra work, going the extra mile makes you a stronger person. It makes you more resilient. It makes you, so these are opportunities that we have to grow. And luckily, I've never had a food police person in my life, and that may be just because I'm a very outspoken person, or at least people know that I'm able to take care of myself, and they may not want to say anything to me, even if they were thinking it. But I don't know. But if I would do the same thing. So maybe if it's at Thanksgiving or somebody says something, you'd say like, "Hey, grandma, like I really appreciate that you love me. Like I love that you love me and that you want me to be healthy. But at the same time, this is my diabetes, and I'm fully aware of how to take my insulin and cover for, these mashed potatoes or whatever it is, or this pie or whatever it is. And I promise you that I'm going to be totally fine. And I really it would be probably less thing for me to worry about if you didn't always say that, because it makes me feel bad. It makes me feel like I'm under a microscope when you're always asking me what I can and can't eat. It would make me feel really great if you just knew and believed in me that I could make these decisions for myself. And really it really is that. And a lot of people just aren't comfortable speaking in those terms. People are so closed off at their emotions, and they see being emotional as a sign of weakness or that kind of thing, or openly expressing yourself as a sign of, I don't know, I guess weakness. But the thing is, I think it's a sign of strength, because most people nowadays are like so closed off with their emotions. And, if you cry, it's this. And if you say the word love, you're this. Or it's like, we need to say the word love more. We need to feel our emotions more. We need to not press everything down into this pit of like anger and despair, so that when somebody does food police us, we're like, shut up, leave me alone. Like it becomes this like giant explosion. And instead we can actually, before we open our mouths and start letting them flap and then like kind of walk away and let our mouths do all the talking, that we say, hey, what is the outcome I want from this? Because I'm about to say something to grandma. So let me decide whether this is going to be a positive situation with her or a negative situation with her. And it really is up to you. It's up to me and you and every other person that's the initiator of a conversation, what the tonality of that conversation and that exchange is going to be. Because you, again, it's a control of your choices. You can choose to scream and yell and say, leave me alone and don't worry about it and get out of my face, which is actually what I used to say to my mom when she would ask me about what I ate and what my blood sugars were like when I was a teenager and having all of these problems. And I still apologize to her to this day, but she forgives me. But I still feel really bad because she's an amazing person and she's like my best friend. But I was pushing away, my biggest support system. All she wanted to do was help. She wasn't actually being the food police. She just wanted to like be involved. And I was just like, no, leave me alone. But at the same time, if I would have just even had the cognizance, the idea that I could have said that in a way I didn't know back then. I didn't know that if I would have chosen a different sentence, chosen different words, chosen to say to myself, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath, and then I'm going to have this conversation in a calm manner, versus being like just all of this anger and rage. It's because having diabetes can cause diabetes may cause anger and rage. Like it really can. Like it really can. But at the same time, we can control it by the words that we choose and the way that we choose to say them and the tone of voice that we choose to say them in. And it takes practice. All of this that I'm saying, everything that I've said, takes practice. I'm a big proponent of practice. Repetition is the mother of skill. That is one of my favorite sayings, quotes. I don't know where I got it from. I think Tony Robbins, to be honest. But the thing is that you have to keep practicing these things. Like I didn't overcome my eating disorder from like one day or even 1 year to the next. It was practice. Okay, this works. Okay, I'm back. Okay, practice a little bit more. Okay, this works and this works. Now I have two things that work, and now I'm kind of, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, until you get finally to where you are, where you're like, okay, now this works. And now not only does this work, but this is my new mode of operation. This is how I operate now. And it actually just becomes, to go back to the way it was would actually be difficult to me, because that is foreign to me now. Whereas, you know, along the journey, you know, it's easier to do those forward and backward steps. And it's the same with communication. If you're used to having contentious relationships with everyone, and every time you talk to somebody, you're having a negative outcome, you're going to have to practice. And practice is not always easy, but it is always worth it. It really is. That's really all I can say. It's just worth the effort, because when you go in to have a conversation with somebody and you're not dreading it, I mean, who wants to have a conversation with anybody that they're dreading? It's not fun. And your whole quality of health and life improves when you choose to take different steps. So if I've preached long enough.
That was great. You know, while you were a fine joined the chat room named Bill 8.
Oh, you should probably kick him out. He's a disruptor.
Well, he's shouting a bill of love and from here.
Oh, well, that's very nice. He should be. He's my husband.
So let's, in the last bit of time that we have, talk about romantic relationships. Speaking of Bill H., your husband. This is something people have such a range of experience with their romantic partners. I've heard folks in 2 Diabetes say, my spouse doesn't actually know anything about diabetes and doesn't know about my diabetes, and has pretty expressly said that this is my thing and they don't want to have any part of it. 2, people having spouses who learn everything there is to know about diabetes, and even to the point where they can help their partner make management decisions if their partner would like that sort of support. So there's this incredible, of course, because everybody's different, there's this incredible range of experience. Personally, I have a story about one of my favorite experiences with a partner that was kind of revolutionary to me, because it was someone who I was fairly newly dating, not a partner at the time, who took it upon herself to start learning about diabetes, and actually didn't talk to me about it, didn't ask where should I go to learn about this, but really just started sort of Googling stuff and researching and asking me questions about, you know, I see that you're testing your blood sugar and you got this number, so what does that number mean? And what number would you like it to be? And just asking all these questions about my bolusing, how do I figure out how much insulin I think I need? And I talked her through the complicated mathematical process of trying to count carbs and all of this stuff. And so she was just really observing and paying attention to all of the things that I did. And at some point, she became very frustrated. And she said, I don't understand it. You did your blood test, you counted your carbs, you did all this, like I saw you do this whole meticulous process. You know your insulin to carb ratio that you've taught me about, and you did the math on that. And then you ate your meal, and 2 hours later, your blood sugar was 300. How on earth did that happen? Because the last time we ate this same meal, you were low afterward. And she finally got that part of having diabetes. And I'll tell you, it was the most validating experience for me to have her see, like, yeah, I followed all the instructions and I got different outcomes, and it's frustrating, and that's how it is. It was a beautiful experience for me. So that's my story about diabetes support in a relationship, is not only someone being interested in learning about my diabetes, but also being there with me in the feelings about it. And I think a lot of people don't have that in their relationship. So can you talk about that, about how to sort of share this experience with a romantic partner, someone who hopefully you get to see every single day, and check in with about how was your day. How do you coach people who are having challenges with getting the support that they need from that partner?
Sure. So I've actually had both experiences. Hopefully Bill H, no, I'm just kidding. He's my husband. We've been married 9 years now, but before him, I actually was in a 4-year relationship that I actually lived with the other person. And it was very similar to what you were describing about diabetes was my thing. He didn't expressly say, I don't want to know anything about diabetes. However, he just wasn't interested. He didn't Google it. He didn't ask me about how much I was bolusing or ask me about why I was doing this at certain times. I mean, he would get me juice or something if I asked him to, but that was probably the extent of it, you know? Whereas now I'm in a relationship where I'm extremely grateful that, you know, like just when I started, well, actually my husband is a computer guy, you know, he works internet, IT for actually project management for the Department of Defense and cyber security. So the minute he found out about diabetes and that I had it, he went to Googling, kind of like you said, and he learned everything about it because he wanted to know. But the thing is that what he found on the internet was that diabetes was going to hinder our relationship, that it was going to stop me from traveling, that I was going to have, you know, retinopathy and kidney failure and all this other stuff. And, you know, he didn't know me that well. This is the very beginning. So he found out all this terrible stuff about diabetes. And as our relationship progressed, and he asked me questions and found out things, he realized that what he had learned wasn't necessarily true. But he told me this honestly and straight out before we became very exclusive. You know, we just dated for a while. He said, I was on the fence about becoming exclusive with you because I thought that you were going to be like this, have all these medical, and he wasn't saying it to be a jerk. He was being honest. You know, he's like, I know now that that's not true. And I'm really glad that we are here now. He's like, but damn, the internet sucks. He's like, you know, the internet's giving out all this information that makes people think that people with diabetes are these sickly, you know, people that can't do things. So yeah, so I'm lucky now to have, you know, a husband who is very supportive and thinks that my robotic parts are sexy and thinks that I'm a cyborg. And I'm very grateful all of the time for that. But now to get into what you said, it again is going to start with a conversation. If that person has expressly said to you, I don't care about a huge part of your life, and I'm not the type of person that says, hey, you know, you should break up, but you might want to take a step back and examine the validity of the whole relationship. Because if somebody says to me, I don't want anything to do with this gigantic part of your everyday life, that's you might as well punch me in the face. Like, for me, like, that's the equivalent of punching me in the face. Like, how could you say that to someone that you genuinely love and cherish and want to spend your life with and grow with and support and nurture? Because to me, that's what a relationship is. It's about two independent people coming together to help each other be the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be, by enriching each other and supporting each other and building each other up and helping each other with their flaws. And, you know, you see something and you know, but if you see diabetes is a huge part of my life, and I'm not ashamed of that, or I'm happy about that. I get to learn and teach people. But if somebody said that to me and they didn't want anything to do with it, I would honestly have to take some serious time about examining, do I want to be in this relationship for the rest of my life? As my Omnipod is beeping. Okay, so I just fixed that. But yeah, no, and I don't, again, I'm not a naysayer, and I'm not like someone that says, oh, you should dump people, you know, on the spot. But at the same time, I do believe with every fiber of my being that in order to have a happy relationship, back to that kind of same word again, happy, and feel that you're valued and that you're needed and that you're loved and that you're appreciated, that means all of you, not just the parts that the person is choosing that they want to accept and the parts that they don't. Because to me, that's not healthy. That's not a healthy relationship, whether you have diabetes or anything, you know, any part of your life that somebody says, I want nothing, I like you, I love you, but I don't want to have to do with this big part of you. No, like, to me, that's not okay. I have never coached anybody to get divorced, not at least to this point. That has never been, you know, a part of it. But I have helped people have open up dialogues with people in their lives to explain to them, you know, because people, they don't understand. If that person doesn't want to be involved, and you know your blood sugars are fluctuating, but they don't understand that that's going to cause you to be tired or cranky or angry or irrational, then of course that's going to cause a slew of other problems, because that the other person doesn't know that those are things that they need to be on the lookout for. So yeah, I think that finding a partner, whether you're with one now or you're looking for one, then and you have diabetes, yes, diabetes has to be a factor. Yes, it has to be something that that person is willing to accept and embrace, just like you have to be willing to accept and embrace diabetes, even though you might rather punch it, but really, again, it comes to the functionality of the relationship. Even if you don't love somebody and you hug them, you're going to get further than you will if you don't love them and you punch them. It's the same thing with diabetes. You have to embrace it and kind of nurture it the same way you would a relationship that you want to kind of flourish. You have to be in a good relationship, a healthy relationship with diabetes. That's actually in the title of my book. And now that I think about it, coming full circle, is about improving your relationship with diabetes for the better, because we are all in a relationship with our diabetes. And a lot of us need to have some therapy, have a couples therapy with a diabetes counselor, because a lot of us are in a dysfunctional relationship with our diabetes. And I think once we work that out, then we're going to be able to much more appropriately attract that person into our lives that is also going to embrace all of us, including our diabetes, which is, whether we want to have it be or not, a huge part of our day-to-day lives, and become okay with that.
Hear, hear. That was fantastic. You're getting a lot of thumbs up and high fives in the chat room. And kind of hilariously, in the chat room, several people said that when they heard your Dexcom beeping just now, everybody else reached for their machinery to check.
It was my Omnipod. My pump was suspended.
My pump? Is it my Dex? Is it my CGM? Was it my hearing aid? Somebody said he checked his hearing aids. That's one of the funny quirks of being somebody who wears medical gadgetry, is you hear something beep and immediately you're reaching for all of your stuff to make sure you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Danielle, our time is up, but that was fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell folks, please, the URL of your website so that they can follow your work?
Sure. Very not surprisingly, my website is diabetesdominator.com. Spelled exactly as it sounds. And yeah, from there you can link to, I'm everywhere, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, where you can go see my interviews. And yeah, I'll see you on the internet. Reach out, say hello.
Fantastic. And I wish you and Bill a very happy Valentine's Day on Sunday.
I don't know your partner's name, but I already know that we have a lot more in common than I thought we did with our backgrounds.
Her name is Katerina.
Katerina, Emily, have a wonderful Valentine's Day.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Good speaking with you.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.